Welcome to the Art of Woo podcast with your host, Lee Erickson.
All right. So basically, I feel like I am a bit overdue at really just kind of explaining my version and my view, my perspective of awakening, aka consciousness, mostly because I keep using that term in a lot of my other podcasts or just conversations. I owe it to everybody listening to this to have some sort of definition or explanation behind what awakening or consciousness is. Also, it's hilarious that I'm sitting here trying to tell you about consciousness and my definition while I just got a haircut and I feel like I look kind of like a Karen right now. So just disclaimer, I don't know if anyone else ever goes to, this just happens to me every fucking time where I go to get a haircut, and for some reason it's probably because I've moved around so many different times. I feel like I'm like in a new state every few years, and I'm constantly looking for a good hairdresser, and every single time I have to explain to this brand new hairdresser that my hair is actually way thicker than it looks, and once you get to cutting it, it's like a whole kind of adventure. And like I try so hard to tell them that like I really don't want this like hard chop blunt look, and yet every time it happens. So anyways, here we are. My attempt is, putting it up like this, but I digress. I apologize. I just feel like it's kind of funny. Like I just feel very Karen-esque, and I'm sitting here talking into a microphone about consciousness and awakening. So to get to the point, I feel like I owe it to everybody to kind of define that a little bit. Again, because I feel like I keep using that term, and I wanted to just kind of lay the grounds of where I am coming from when that term is used. And big, again, disclaimer that this is my perspective. I never want to come off as if I have all the answers, follow me because I'm on the right track. Like the biggest thing that I want everybody to know with just listening to me, and my ramblings is that I don't necessarily have I don't have all the answers. I absolutely do not. What I do have is a deep passion and drive for exploration. And we are in Sagittarius season after all. If you know me well, I am a Sag sun. And I am big into exploration. And that doesn't necessarily mean like going across the continent and checking out cool new hiking trails. It means, exploration of consciousness and humanity. And what does that look like today? Well, I'll tell you. So I believe that right now, as we speak, we are in November, end of November 2024, and we are in one of the most fascinating times to be alive in all of humanity. And it's funny, I have this debate with my husband a lot because I say this over and over again. I'm like, this is an incredible time to be alive. And he's like, no, it's not. Like, yeah, there's a lot going on. And, we have, it's like very intense energies. There's so much in the ethers happening. Like there's wars happening. I mean, that's not an amazing time to be alive, but the intensity is increasing like no other. And when I say intensity, I'm actually referring to the awakening intensity. I believe that, again, from my perspective, I think that humanity is evolving and shifting at the most rapid pace we've yet to ever experience in humanity. I am aware of past civilizations that were extremely evolved compared to us. Obviously there was the Egyptians, there was Atlantis, there was a lot of other, there was the Mayans, there was a lot of other times in humanity's existence where we were extremely evolved. And I'm not a historian, and I do know that those things existed, and I do feel strongly that they were actually way more evolved than we are now. But back to my point, I feel like this is an amazing time to be alive because, well, actually, because of the internet. We are able to connect like never before. And it is able to show us a perspective from someone across the world or, across the country or a different country or whatever it is. And that is evolving us like no other. When I think about awakening, it's waking up, right? I mean, that term is thrown around so much right now. And it's almost a little dangerous because I think that part of some of the problems and issues that we are actually facing is putting a label on, groups of people so quickly and so easily, specifically ones that we think that they fall into a certain category of, when really we actually have no idea who they really are. Maybe we read a post or a comment or something and we immediately put them in a box. And we need to stop doing that because it just continues to push us further away from consciousness. Anyways, I just did that thing where I just did the most roundabout way to actually get to my point, where I start to talk about a point that I'm going to make, but then I take 15 minutes loop-de-dooping all around different stories and ideas, and then I never actually get to the point that I'm trying to make. So I'm going to cut to the chase. Awakening. What does that mean to me? And maybe this will help you if you're curious. If you are hearing that term thrown around left and right, and I don't mean that politically, but unfortunately it is being thrown around politically, the woke term, which I'm not even going to get into that, but I mean, I think the wokeism and all of that is actually one giant not like a psyop, but it's almost like this one giant label that is actually devalue what awakening is. So I'm not talking about being woke. I'm talking about awakening. This is completely different. Waking up. Basically, awakening in my eyes is humanity evolving its consciousness, becoming more conscious. What does that mean? To me, one of my biggest personal kind of aha moments with that experience is waking up to just how incredibly powerful we are as humans. And I talk about this a lot, especially in my episodes having to do with my daughter's cancer journey. And that was part of my awakening stage, where it was really what it came down to was listening to inner voices, aka intuition. And I talk about this all the time, but I'm so fortunate that my husband was on the same page as me with that experience, because that would have been a whole other mountain to climb in itself. But fortunately, if you haven't heard about the story, essentially what happened was, as soon as we found out that my daughter's tumor was cancerous, they immediately wanted to put her on chemotherapy. And when this happened, she was literally one. It was literally like the week of her first birthday. So she's just like a baby. And it just didn't feel right to us. It hadn't spread in her body. It was literally in a centralized place on her neck. And I knew in my heart that surgery made way more sense. And they didn't even give that as an option to us. So long story short, we fortunately stuck to our guns. We listened to our intuition and our heart, and we ended up finding a different hospital they for a second opinion, and they ended up doing surgery and everything was successful, and yeah, happier ending in that regard. So that was like a huge step towards me waking up to realizing how powerful we are. Like, essentially, that specific scenario was not just listening to authority and trusting that this external source outside of me, whether they have a degree in medical, whatever, they went to med school, they have a white coat, they they do this all the time. Okay, that's great. But I still knew, and fortunately, again, my husband still knew that that was not the right experience and choice for us at that time. So that's just one example. Waking up, I think, on top of learning just how powerful you are, is also really just learning more and more and more about really kind of what's going on behind the scenes. Essentially, it is learning about your programming and our programming as a collective, what we are taught and told our whole lives growing up, since, itty bitty, even elementary school, college. I'm not saying all education is bad, but I'm just saying so much of what we are taught in this current society doesn't really ultimately serve us. I mean, of course, if you, again, back to education, specifically speaking, if you are going to school specifically to learn about a certain topic that you want to learn about, great, that serves a purpose. But at the same time, I think the message that I guess I'm trying to convey is that, again, it's these external sources that we are so programmed and taught into thinking that is the solution to our problems, when really, if we just kind of go internal, if we, really focus inward, all of our energy on just what it is that our stories, our programming is telling us about life as we see it, and how that can be detrimental to us by the stories that we're told and the things that we are taught while we're, growing up in this current society. And when I say society, I just mean, like, today's world, like what's going on all around us. And it's programming us all the time. And again, what I'm saying is not profound, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of my definition of waking up, without sounding too much like an anarchist. To be honest, like, that is a big part of the timeline that we are in right now. There's so much to be said about this topic. And for me to just sit here at my desk and try to even like scratch the surface of what this means is almost laughable, because there is just so many layers to learning about, again, what the eye cannot see, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm jumping around, but quantum physics has a lot to do with this as well. Where do I begin? Let's talk about timelines. So timelines is a great subject to kind of also learn about while you are kind of learning about programming. And I'm sure you've also heard, if you're in anywhere near the kind of spiritual world, or I don't know if wokeism talks about this, but your inner child work is like literally the key to becoming more powerful. Finding your triggers, I'm seeing a lot of this on the internet right now too. I mean, I've been studying this for years, but finding your triggers and seeing what triggers you is literally the key to your healing, because the things that really get under your skin are the things that are running the programs in the background, things that happen to you at some point in your life that need healing. So when it comes to timelines, that is a extreme aha moment that essentially helps us figure out the fact that life isn't just this one linear thing. It's not just you're born, you go to college or whatever, you get married, you buy a house, blah, 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 blah. You retire, you die. Life is not necessarily that. As many of you know, I am a big, big believer. I mean, I don't know. The word believer actually seems kind of ridiculous because it's more than just believing. I think it's like an inner knowing. I have an inner knowing that we live multiple lives, and that also I can talk more about this in another episode when I actually finally start to talk about the Akashic records. But we live many, many lifetimes, some of us more than others. But I have been super into learning about this stuff, so I just wanted to share. And I think this has a big, piece of the puzzle to the awakening definition. So basically, if you're familiar with quantum physics at all, and again, I am not a professional. I am not like a scientist. I don't even know. Is that even the category that it should be in? But this is what I know. And I do just want to share this. So basically, what we are taught in this life is that time is linear, right? We're born, we live our lives, yada, 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 and then we die. But there's so much more to the story than that. Quantum physics tells us that there's so much more going on simultaneously while we are living our lives. So think of literally every single second of your life and every move that you make with your hand, your eyes, or your legs, whatever, your mouth, every word that you speak, every thought that you have. The different options that you could be doing, the different choices that you make, the different words that you say are literally infinite. So think about the infinite possibilities of you living this life. And think about the infinite amount of versions of you that are also experiencing life alongside of you at the same time that we're living this life. It's hard to digest because it seems so insane to think about it, because it's literally infinite. The possibilities are infinite. But at the same time, it's also kind of freeing to think that, because, when I was younger and I had no idea about any of this stuff, I used to actually put a ton of pressure on decisions and choices that I made. Not saying that there's no, cause and effect to the decisions that you're making in everyday life, but it's not as much of it's just not as much of the pressure that we like to put on ourselves. It's not as much as we think. So yeah, when I was little, I remember like going out to a restaurant and we'd be sitting around the table, and then the server would come and ask us for an order. And I would like freak out because I hadn't made up my mind, or I was like torn between two different things and I just like didn't know what I wanted. And then like I would order something and then I felt like immediately like, oh, I think that was the wrong decision, and da 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 da. And it's like how minuscule that is. But at the same time, I remember when I was so young, I put a lot of weird anxiety around that because I didn't want to make the wrong decision. So again, if you think about quantum physics, it's all about basically parallel realities. So there's parallel versions of us happening right now. We can't see it. We're not there. It's a different timeline. If that makes sense. So, in that sense, this also plays into reincarnation and past lives and just how our souls, our energy, and it's actually been scientifically proven that energy cannot die. Energy never disappears. Energy stays present, more or less. It may not be right here, right now, our soul, once we actually leave this plane, this timeline, but it's somewhere. And where is it? It's part of one big, giant ball of consciousness. And from my perspective, from what I've learned in my inner exploration and outward exploration, is that we are all one consciousness. We are all one. This goes into hand in hand with the law of one. Some of you may be familiar. But we are all one. All of us, every one of us, even the most despicable or horrific people that you can think of in this world at current moment. He or she is like your brother or your sister. We are all one. We all come from the same place. We all go back to the same place, more or less. Like the thing is it's like the trees are a great example. We're learning more about how the trees actually communicate with each other. Underground, it's like this whole underground system. Their roots, it's like this communication system, because in reality, they actually are all one and they work together to thrive and survive. It's all one ecosystem. And believe it or not, we are actually also one with the trees. We are one with the trees. We are one with everything. We are one with this hair elastic. I'm one with this microphone. Like there's literally not much of a difference. So if you start to look at life through the lens of that perspective, I guarantee it will change your life and perspective dramatically. So I know we're all caught up in a lot of this election aftermath or hangover or whatever you want to call it. And I get it. It's rough. It's brutal. There's a lot going on. Even if you didn't believe in that theory of the law of one, even if it doesn't necessarily resonate with you, which is totally fine. And again, I believe that a big part of evolution of human consciousness is your own discernment and again listening to your own intuition and not just believing every single thing you hear on the internet, which I get. Like there's a lot of noise out there. Even if you don't believe in that theory, what if you did just start to look at the world through that lens? We are literally all one. How would that change your perspective? It's hard to really fully digest because, again, I know how much there are horrific things happening all over the world all the time. It almost seems never ending. But when you do look at the situation or another person with an awareness that maybe there is some reasoning behind them doing what they are doing. Maybe they had such trauma in their childhood or even recent years that have led them to the path that they are on. It's hard to do. It's hard to justify violent acts of humanity. And I'm not sitting here trying to justify any of that because believe me, I hate what's happening all over the world, these wars that we're experiencing at current moment. But the awareness of looking at things through the lens of the law of one, as well as the fact that light can't necessarily survive without dark, and dark can't necessarily survive without light. It's a real riddle when you really start to think about it. The good news is, from my sources, do I want to talk about aliens right now? I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it, but I don't know if I'm going to today. I don't know if I have enough time. But a lot of sources out there that I pay attention to, and key part of this is that it's a lot of sources and not just one or two. I really, again, in this Jupiter and Gemini time frame that we are in right now, information is just bouncing off the walls. It's information overload. Sometimes it just feels like one giant echo chamber. I actually have a lot of inner, like a little bit of self-doubt, just like thinking about how I'm adding to the echo chamber, but I'd like to think I'm making a difference. Or I'm coming in with like some sort of different perspective or helpful perspective. Yeah. So the sources that I listen to, and there's a lot, or follow or pay attention to at this current moment. And honestly, you know, at the end of the day, I still always feel like your inner intuition going inward, really going through the cobwebs, going through all of the stuff that's buried down deep, getting through that, clearing through that, and being able to receive information from your higher self, more or less, is probably your best tool in life. But until you can get to that point too, it also does not hurt to seek outward guidance, which I know that maybe is a little bit of a hypocrisy compared to what I was saying earlier in this episode about how we are so trained to listen to outside sources for our information. I think when I'm speaking about that, I'm more so talking about like old world sources that make you feel empowered, I believe is the tool of discernment that we should all use. So I feel like any sort of external source that makes you feel disempowered is old world programming. And for any human design buffs out there, one of my sources is a podcast that I listen to and absolutely love, Projector and the Flail with Jessa Reed and Mark Pontius. They kind of have an overall theme of their podcast to be human design, you know, subjected, and they talk a lot about the cross of planning and the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And in human design terms, I'm not super proficient in that world. I'll know like my profile and my things that I can offer and so on, but I'm still learning a lot about that. But it is fascinating to me. so not only is this like Pluto and Aquarius shift that we're making massive for the collective, but simultaneously, and I don't know if this is like directly correlated or related with human design and astrology, but in human design, we are moving from the age of the cross of planning to the cross of sleeping phoenix. I really wish I could define more of those terms to you, but from what I've gathered, what I know is that the cross of planning was also very like Capricornian energy, rigid hierarchy, systems, institutions, formality, structure, yada, yada, yada. That's been such a big part of our lives, right? Moving away from that cross of planning, it's very much like that similar idea. It's yeah, just kind of having that like external authority to tell you how to act, where, you know, what the rules are, like what we're all supposed to do to abide by. And again, like when I talk like this, I don't mean like, oh, we don't need any rules, like we should all just be like a fucking free for all. I it's not like that is the goal. The goal is for humanity's consciousness to evolve far enough to the point where we don't need restrictions and out external authority to rule us. And we're getting there. I guarantee. I know, I feel it in my bones. We are so close. That's what all of this chaos is about. Because in order to arrive to this point of awakening, we need to, it's like our last hurrah almost. It's like digging up all of the muck that's been just pushed down and buried for so long that we as a current collective, all of us right now in this together, are literally processing together and individually to get to this next level. And it's a lot. It is so much. It's so overwhelming. And so that is why like we're seeing this happen on the world stage. That's why we're seeing like, you know, any social media, any news, anything, especially with like a comments section. That's why you're seeing people just freak the fuck out. Like any chance they can get. And I don't blame them. Like this is not easy. Another part of this whole, I mean, this is like, if I really wanted to encapsulate the definition of awakening or human higher consciousness, it would take me years, but I'm trying to like not dumb it down, but simplify it. So this is maybe digestible. Okay. Well, unfortunately I lost that train of thought because you can tell that I haven't recorded in a long time because I'm feeling like I have to get every single nut and bolt thought goes through my head out into this recording, and that's not helpful. So yeah, we're basically just we're like purging, if that makes sense. We're purging all of this shit that's been buried in the human consciousness for so long, and it's just playing out in front of our eyes. Oh, I know what I was going to say. We humans here on Earth at current moment, we are some brave ass motherfucking souls, okay? This planet is not for the faint of heart. This three-dimensional world that we are living in and experiencing is not easy for anybody. I don't care how many lives you've lived. I don't care how wise you are. It is not easy for anybody. But give yourself a pat on the back because your soul chose to be here. Your soul chose to come down to Earth, experience this lifetime in the body that you chose, and go through this time that we are living, which again, I'm convinced this is one of the most prolific times to be alive. So just take a moment to give yourself some credit because again, world's not easy. but your brave little soul chose to come down here and experience this and be a part of this massive awakening that is happening. Massive. So you can start to see it. I don't know if whoever is listening to this, I'm assuming you got at least a toe dipped into the kind of woo-woo world. This is the freaking Art of Woo podcast. I'm assuming you're familiar with a lot of the terms that I'm throwing out. Inner child work, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5th-dimensional. We can talk more about that maybe later in another episode because that is a whole other topic. But these are big, big, big human consciousness evolution subjects. And it's become like modern, everyday terminology now, which is amazing. And that's how you can tell that we are collectively waking up. We are boots on the ground, really diving deep into our own shit. And if you're not yet, I imagine you will be in the next few years, because I strongly believe that the universe has some greater plan to wake everybody up in their own way. I guarantee that is why my daughter had the situation that she did. It forced me, my soul, to step out of my comfort zone, to have the dark night of the soul, if you will, to evolve out of previous beliefs and thoughts. And I'm not done. I'm still evolving every single day. I'll never be done. My soul will never be done evolving. But we're taking a giant leap right now. So I hope this resonates. I really also want to talk about, I'm not going to do it right too much, dive deep into like the aliens and that stuff, because that's a whole other long topic. But I will just say that there's a lot of chatter and noise right now, specifically with aliens and ETs. If you're paying attention to the news, even the mainstream media news, which is huge, they drop like little hints every now and then. In the past couple of decades, there's been like some coverage, but it's never been to the amount that it's surfacing right now. And I think it's interesting. I have a whole opinion. I'm going to do a whole other episode about this. All I got to say is, again, use your own discernment. I will just say this. If the government tries to take this into their own hands and turn it into a story that has the underlying program of fear behind it, don't fall for it. My intuition, again, use your own discernment. Don't just, it's okay. If you don't resonate with this, totally fine. I'm not trying to force my own opinions on anyone, but I am just sharing my thoughts. That's why I'm here. I just feel like if we do finally have contact with ETs, I don't think it's going to be through the government. And if it is through the government, I worry a little bit that it will be a bit of a staged, cinematic-ish event that will just be another huge, great excuse for them to induce fear into the public and, increase the military fund that much more. You know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at? Because from what I've gathered, there's a lot of different ones out there, and not all of them are like love and light, but I think a lot of them are here with us. I think they're all with us already, and I think they actually want the best for us, and I think they want for human consciousness to evolve, so we can finally just be like buddies and like hang out. And anyways, that was a long rant. I hope that made sense. I haven't recorded in a while. I feel like I'm a bit rusty, so bear with me. I appreciate you just being here and listening. I also hope you're hanging in there. I know, again, like I can't say this enough. It's a crazy time to be alive. The world is absolutely insane. I hope that you are taking care of yourself. Yeah, just take time for yourself. Rest, treat yourself, take a bath, whatever, unplug, do what you got to do. Also, if you want to hang out with me, book a reading, please. I would love to just get to know my listeners and followers and help them out in any way. Even if it's not specifically astrology, shoot me a message and I would love to talk. I'm like such a nerd with this stuff and I will talk to anyone and everyone about consciousness and spiritual awakening. So I hope you enjoyed this. You know where to find me. Love you.